All right, so this is the social studies orientation for world history. So this is a freshman class at Putnam.
You see the link in the chat box. If you can't see the
and this is the social studies department. So there are 5 teachers at Putnam that teach social studies classes. There are many different social studies classes. You'll see the different classes that are available at Putnam when I talk about the individual teachers, but we've got basically Mr. Alper that you see here on the top left. I'm going to just put my pointer on. Then Miss Ludwig, who is at the top middle, Mr. Miller on the top right, Miss Mullins, who is down there, and then Miss Wilson, who is me. So your world history teacher. So there are 3 different world history teachers. So one teacher that you possibly could have on your schedule that you probably have seen already is Miss Ludwig. Most of her students call her Ms. L. So she has been at Putnam for 7 years, but teaching for almost 20. And you can see here some of her free time activities that she enjoys. And also that she, in addition to teaching world history, also teaches government. And at the bottom of the screen, that is her email address that you can use to contact her if you have any specific questions. Moving on to me, I'm the second world history teacher, Ms. Wilson. So this is only my 2nd year at Putnam because before that I was living and teaching in France for 25 years. But I teach, in addition to world history, I also teach US history and geography, IB geography this year. And that is my North Clackamas Gmail address that you can see there at the bottom. And then the last world history teacher is Ms. Mullins, that some others of you may have. So she has been at Putnam for 7 years, and she also teaches IB history. All right, and then just so that you notice, her email address is Wilkinson A rather than Mullins A, so just kind of try and take note of that. All right, so those are the 3 world history teachers. This is the schedule, and I'm assuming that most of you have seen the schedule already when you've done the other department orientations. So I'll just kind of go over some of the highlights for you. You'll notice it's color-coded, so the mornings are in green. That is when you guys are going to be having your live sessions with you. The mornings at 8:30 in the morning, you'll have an hour-long live session followed by an office hour with your teacher for half an hour. For that particular class. That's optional. It's only if you have questions or need to talk to your teacher that you can participate in that. Otherwise, it's the hour-long class in the morning. And then you have a quick break, and then you have a second live class in the morning. And then you'll see that the afternoons are a completely different color because that's when you're going to be doing your asynchronous learning, which is basically like your homework. You're going to be given assignments and tasks that you need to do on your own time. Those time slots that are there, those are only proposals. You do not have to stick strictly to those time slots because we know some students may have after-school jobs, they may be looking after siblings, they may just be on a body clock where they're better at working in the evenings. So that's totally fine for you to do that. We just wanted to kind of let you see more or less how much time per day you should be counting on spending on those asynchronous tasks. And then the other thing you'll probably notice about the schedule is that Wednesday looks quite different, especially for the freshmen. It's important that you know that Wednesday from 9:45 to 10:30, you guys are going to have a community meeting class. That's kind of like a homeroom. So one of my world history periods I have for that community and connections class that will be held on Wednesday morning, that's really a time to check in and to see how everyone's doing, to kind of get to know everybody better and to be there to just help out in any way so that we can kind of, form a community and people can have a reference teacher that they can ask any questions that they have to and feel like they're being supported. So that's kind of the purpose of that. All right, so moving on. What to expect in the live sessions in in world history. Basically, that is when we are going to be reviewing content that you have already seen on your own. So that could take the form of games like a Kahoots game or other game. It could be having students fill out a Google form together that you'll pull up. You could see possibly a short lecture from the teacher about a subject before you work on it on your own. It could also be live sessions, could be a class discussion, maybe short quizzes on something that we've just seen together, have smaller groups. So to have breakout sessions, so that's something that is going to be different than what most of you experienced in the springtime. And then, of course, we'll give you some instructions about what you need to do for your homework for your asynchronous learning. So to just then kind of tell you some basics about what you may be asked to do for homework. As I said, that's going to be when you are doing your content acquisition. So you may be asked to read a short text and possibly to annotate it or to highlight it and make a few notes about it. You could be asked to watch a video or two and to answer some questions about that video. You could be given writing assignments. Those are some basic typical sort of activities that you could do during this asynchronous time in the afternoons. And then it's really important that all of you are on board with the fact that it's the expectation is that all of that asynchronous homework is done before the next live huddle that we will be using all year. Okay, so that's really important. So what are we going to be studying in world history? So the content it's actually an entirely new curriculum that it was designed starting last spring and into the summer, which, as you can imagine, was quite challenging with COVID. But basically, our first unit that we're going to start the year off with, so for Q1 or Q2, if you have it in the later periods of the day, we're going to be doing a unit on multiculturalism. So multiculturalism is going to be looking at what is culture exactly, what makes up a person's culture. We're also going to be studying some major world religions, so the 3 monotheistic religions. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time to do the Eastern religions because we are going to be on a shortened schedule with the distance learning model. And then we'll finish up that unit with a case study about different cultural groups coexisting peacefully. And then the latter part of Q1, we are going to do our second unit is going to be on power structures. So that is going to be looking at methods of dominance and resistance. And then implications for today, how that colonial legacy has impacted developing countries. And then semester 2, so that could be Q3 or Q4 for you. We'll be doing a unit on conflict and its legacies. So we'll be talking about the world wars and also some examples of genocides and the outcomes of those conflicts. And then our last unit is going to be current global impact. And that is going to be basically, you guys are going to get to choose a topic of your choice, and you are going to do a research project on it. And so we'll give you obviously lots of guidelines about those expectations and some ideas for different subjects that you can choose for that. So some suggestions for success. This is as much, I think, for students as it is for parents to kind of just get on board for some advice that the social studies department would like to give to all of you. The first one is the recognized importance of having a dedicated workspace. That does not mean that you need to have an office at home. It just means that you need to go to a place and that needs to be sort of your place where you are going to do your schoolwork and where you can have a minimum amount of interruptions for your live sessions, for example. And then also just to communicate with your family about, when you have your live session so that they are aware that that's, a time to avoid interrupting you because you're going to be focusing on what's happening on the screen and listening to what people are saying, etc. The other thing is that during those live sessions, it's extremely important, as you can imagine, that you are actually present, right? We are only going to be asking you to be present 2 hours a day, which is really very, very little in the big picture. So during those 2 hours, we ask that you turn off your cell phones, you put them away, it's really difficult to not be tempted to look at your phone if you see that you get a text or whatever. So just move it out of your, area of vision so that that is not a temptation. The other thing is that, normally in world history, we spend a lot of time on the interactive notebook. But because we are doing this, from a distance, we're not able to do that. But what we are asking the students to do is that you have a notebook where you can take notes. So some sort of a system also for organizing those notes, keeping them in the same place, having some sort of a folder where you put them. Because the thing is that you're going to see that the final exams at the end of the units are open note. But, if you are not organizing those notes and taking those notes, you're not going to have a lot of material to help you to do well on those tests. So that's extremely important. Suggestion for success. Also, make a plan for completing your homework. I know a lot of students, when we got the feedback after last spring, it was really hard for some students to function without structure. So it's really important that you have a regular time set aside. It doesn't have to be when the schedule indicates. It can be, let's say 8 o'clock in the evening. I don't know, but that you have some sort of a regular plan of when you're going to get your homework done to be sure that it's completed before that next live session. The other thing that we would suggest is that you take regular breaks, that you do not sit in, in a desk, at a desk for hours and hours at a time, that you get up and move around, you go and get a drink of water, you go to the bathroom, have a snack, take advantage of some of the great things about being at home while you're learning. So move around from time to time and let your muscles kind of relax a bit. And then the last thing for our suggestions would be to have an actual sleep schedule. It's really difficult to be fresh for learning at 8:30 in the morning if you are going to bed at 3 a.m., as you can imagine. So try to force yourself to get to sleep, at a decent hour at night so that you can have at least 7 hours of sleep so that you can be functioning properly for those morning sessions. And that's really it for our suggestions. Go on to the next slide. So our grading policy for world history. One thing you guys should know is that the 3 world history teachers, we meet together weekly, sometimes even more than once a week. We know each other really well. We're really good friends. We work together super well. All of the content we plan together, all of our grading policies in common. So, there isn't going to be a huge distinction in terms of the actual content and the delivery of the learning in world history this year. So there are basically 2 types of grades. There are what we call formative assessment, which is sort of like your daily work. It's your homework assignments that you're doing asynchronously. It can be check-in quizzes, those sort of things that you're doing on a more regular basis that are going to be worth 30% of your overall grade. So that's, less than a third, so not a huge amount, but all of that work is going to be used when you take your end of unit tests. And that is what we call the summative assessment. So it's sort of the summary test at the end of the unit. You are, as I said, you are allowed to use your notes during that. And you are also given choice about formats. For some of you who like to be a little bit more creative, we try to allow for that. And those grades are going to be worth 70% of your grades. So a huge amount of it. So it's really, really important that you do the daily work in order to be successful when it comes to your end of unit test. All right, and that was it. So we are ready now for questions.